AJ Riedel, and this is the Thriving Through podcast, where each week I have real conversations with self-employed consultants about what it really takes to build a profitable, sustainable, and fulfilling consulting practice. Today, my guest is Laura Rudolph, and I have a question for you. How do you build a sustainable consulting business when your entire philosophy is to work yourself out of a project? Laura's here to talk about how she answered that question. She's the founder of Square One Consulting, known for her counterintuitive approach to client relationships. She deliberately builds up clients' capabilities and then steps out rather than creating what she calls long-term dependency. With over 6 years of experience in higher education consulting, she's helped colleges and universities achieve enrollment growth and marketing transformation. If you want honest insights about scope creep struggles, marketing challenges, and the systems needed to build a sustainable practice without burning out, you won't want to miss this episode. Please welcome Laura Rudolph. Welcome to this episode of the Thriving Through podcast. Today, my guest is Laura Rudolph. Laura, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I like to start out with the same question for all of my guests. And that is 2 questions, actually. The first question is, how long have you been a self-employed consultant?
I started consulting in 2019. I was still working full-time in higher education. And honestly, it was not my idea. So a friend of mine who was an accountant at a vendor I'd worked with for years called me out of the blue and said, we have a client who needs help with some things that we don't provide. Have you ever thought about consulting? Because they could really use you. And I hadn't. And that's how it started.
Okay. But you did it part-time for a couple years.
I did. Yeah. So from about 2019 to 2023, I was just part-time. Like a lot of people, I had student loans. And so a side income sounded pretty appealing. So what I had to do is, because I was working full-time, I went to my supervisor just to make sure there was no conflict. Luckily, higher education is very regional in terms of competition. So they not only approved, but they saw it as an opportunity for me to learn from other institutions too, which then could help my full-time role. So they gave me the green light to go ahead. And so, that first project was just meant to be a side bonus, but it definitely turned into something bigger than I had imagined. I continued doing it part-time throughout the pandemic. And then in fall of 2023, I made the leap to go full-time. And, there's no one size fits all blueprint for building a consultancy, especially in higher education. And so I just had to figure that out through a lot of trial and error. And before going full time, I'd spent well over a decade in enrollment and marketing for large publics and regional publics and small liberal arts colleges. And so that experience gave me a really deep understanding of resource constraints and team capacity and how that affects marketing and communications. And then that ultimately helped me kind of shape the business that I have today.
Looking back over that time, tell me a story or 2 about a challenge or an obstacle you've encountered and how you overcame it.
I think what's probably typical across the field of higher education, especially for working in a small school, which I was at the time, is that you're not just wearing one hat. You're wearing like 5 or 6 hats at a given time. You have little budget, you have little resources, sometimes you have little staff. And so you're constantly accepting taking on more, right? Because it's a team environment. Enrollment is you're a team player in an enrollment office. And so that was kind of my mentality. But when you go into consulting, scope of work is really important to manage your time and not only your time, but then also, your income. And so that was my biggest challenge early on, was that I'm just naturally, because of the environment that I was in higher education, used to taking on more. And in that first year, and working with the first 2 or 3 clients, I really had to start deciding, okay, this would be, yes, a great addition to what I'm doing, but I'm not getting paid for that. And I need to make sure that I'm being more aware that there are kind of boundaries of what I need to do with a given contract. Here's what I need to do for my scope of work, and I need to be very aware of what those boundaries are. And early on, I just wasn't. So that was a big challenge for me, because I'm always thinking bigger, wider, how can we have better impact and bigger impact? And sometimes I would just let that get away from me. So that was probably my biggest challenge early on.
So the awareness is good. How do you have the next step after the awareness that you're kind of giving too much or having scope creep? Then the next issue is having that difficult conversation. So how do you handle those? What do you say?
I've been very lucky in that since that point in time, there was one project in particular I can think of where I think I let the scope get a little out of hand. But then in addition to that, I probably also just didn't budget my time very well. And I think when you're starting as a consultant, it's so hard when you've been doing this full time for 15, 16, 17 years, where you're being paid salary and hours mean nothing in higher education, especially in admissions enrollment offices where you're almost always on call, right? It's evening, it's weekend work, it's travel. And so tracking your hours is not something that happens. And so I found that not only was I experiencing scope creep, but I was also not budgeting my time appropriately. It might take me longer to do something than I had anticipated because I had never actually tracked it before. And so I think for me, that was hard for me at first to start having those conversations. Also because I'm like I said, I've come from an environment in education of being a team player. And so you want to do what you want, you want to get done what needs to get done, regardless of the time that you put into it. And that's just not possible as a consultant. So one of the things I've started to do, number one is I really started working on my project management skills. Number two, I started reaching out to other consultants. There was a couple of other people that I happened to know. And so I used them as kind of my mentors to help me think through pricing strategies and hourly rates and how to go about having those conversations, hard conversations. I found that I started really upfronting those conversations in the beginning of a contract than later on, because it's way more difficult later on to do that. So I've learned a couple of skills here and there to better manage my time, my scope creep, and then to better understand the time that it's going to take me to do something. I think in other industries, hourly tracking is really normal. And it's just in higher education, it's not. And so that was one of the biggest adjustments I had.
Okay. What would you do differently if you were starting your consulting business today, knowing what you now know?
Oh, goodness. Probably a lot of things I would probably do a lot of things differently. One of the things that I did about 18, not quite 18 months in, I guess it was about 12 months in, so about a year into the business. I had been going for many years, even though I hadn't been full-time. I had been pretty much had a steady work from 2019 through 2024. But at no time did I really kind of stop and think about, where do I want the direction of my business to go? What is really my mission and my purpose? Who is really the people that I want to work with? And then what directions do I want to go in? Do I want to go into workshopping? And is that kind of the area that I want to explore? Or is it really that I want to be in the weeds and doing the strategy? What are those things that I feel like now that I've been in it for some time, where's my business heading? And I never did that in the beginning, because you say yes to everything in the beginning, right? And so I
Yep.
never said no, right? I just took on everything that was kind of presented to me at the time. So I actually took about 3 months off. I happened to have a lot of projects concluding. And so I took, like, I believe it was a December, January, February. So it kind of aligned with the Christmas holiday and the new year. And so I thought this is a good time for me to kind of do a reset. I need to, now that I'm going into this full time, I need to focus on my own marketing. I market for other people, and now I need to learn to market for myself. I need to figure out how I'm going to structure my pricing a little bit better. I found that it ended up that really there's two main areas in which higher ed likes to structure, and it's usually project based or it's just consulting hourly based. But then occasionally there was a third one, which was fractional, and fractional consulting was not something I had considered before. So I actually added that to um, my services. And then, really just figuring out, okay, what kind of business am I going to do moving forward? And so I feel very strongly what my mission is now, and I wish I had created that from the beginning. I think it would have given me a little bit better direction to know what to say yes to and what to say no to, um, rather than doing it so far into, my time as a consultant. But at least I do have it now. But that would have been great to know early on.
Okay. What is your mission?
Yeah. So some people would say that my business strategy is a poor one. I disagree, but I am not going to be, and I don't intend to be, a hero. That's kind of how I talk about it to some other people. My model is to serve the institution in whatever way they need, train their team to execute it on their own, and then step out. And I realize that long-term dependency is a very common model in other industries. We want to renew clients every year. That's not my mission. My mission is to build them up, make them capable, and then give them the ability to be independent. And like I said, some people may say that's a bad business model, but I think in the world of higher education, it builds a lot of trust in what you do. Um, and when you're a mission-driven consultancy like this, working with mission-driven clients, I think that there's a real synergy in what you believe, and we're on the same team, and I can embed myself a little more deeply than a large agency can. And instead of thinking long-term about dependency on me, I can think more about transformation right now, and empowering the client to be able to take on what I provide them and do it successfully moving forward. And I realize that is an odd mission perhaps for some people in other industries, but for higher education, I think it's really important. And the reason why this is important to me is because I've been in their shoes. I think I mentioned, I worked for 10 years at a liberal arts college, and I wore so many hats over so many years. And we had a lot of transition. We had budget shortfalls. We had all kinds of challenges. And when you don't have the staff or you don't have the budget, it can seem very challenging to be successful. I was about 4 or 5 blocks down the street from a very large SEC institution, and they were almost 20 times our size with I'm sure more than 20 times size our budget. And it just seemed like they had the ability to reach everyone, and we just didn't. They had the ability to work with these amazing agencies and branding agencies, to create wonderful admissions campaigns and to, create content that we just didn't have the capacity to do ourselves. And it kind of makes you feel a little helpless. And so when I was thinking about what is my mission going to be, I want to be the person who can come in, can lift those people up, can do some of the work that maybe they can't afford from other agencies, but can at least get them started on the right track. And then I can train them on how to take it from there. So then they feel a little bit more confident in their abilities. They feel a little bit more confident in being able to compete with their neighbor down the street and not feel like they have to spend, the 4 or 5, thousand, really more than that. Let me back up. I want to be able to provide them with the same types of services that they may get at an agency where they're going to be spending, 6 figures easily for a really big campaign. But I'm going to be significantly more affordable. And yeah, it may take a little bit longer because I'm a consultancy of one, but I guarantee you that I'm going to be able to do it as an embedded member of their team. I'm going to be able to understand them a little bit better. And I'm going to be able to kind of be in the weeds with them and be more personalized and provide that more personalized service. And so I kind of was thinking back to the historical me and what would I have wished I had had access to at that time. And so that's kind of my mission moving forward. So I've kind of pitched that to any client that comes along that I would love for you to use me again. But that's not why I'm, working with you now. I'm working with you now to help you build something and be successful at it for the long term. And the good news is I actually just last week signed a contract with a client for the 3rd time. So they do come back.
Nice. Okay. All right. So your business model is proving that it's not a one and done because of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You mentioned that marketing yourself is harder than marketing for your institution. Why is that, and how are you overcoming it?
I could be wrong. But I think that there's a lot of us who come out of team environments in higher education, and you have a bit of imposter syndrome when suddenly you're working on your own. Okay. And I know that that's something I've struggled with for a long time. You're so in the work every day and you have these blinders on that you don't get a lot of time to look up and connect with other people and go to conferences and have professional development. And a lot of the institutions that I worked for didn't necessarily have the budget to send me to all of the professional development conferences and things I wanted to attend. And I feel like those relationships really matter when you're a consultant, particularly in education. I think in every industry, though, I think this is not just for us. And so when you don't have those connections and you're starting a consultancy, all you have is the work that you've done at your past institution or your past institutions. And a lot of the content that you're developing and the marketing that you're developing is not being seen publicly, right? It's being seen by very segmented, tiny audiences. It's specific types of prospective students and families or admissions, or guidance counselors or, very granular populations of people. And so all of a sudden, when you're on your own, like I was having to market myself without being able to really provide samples of work, because that's also difficult in education to do. And so I felt like all of a sudden I'm needing to promote myself. I have very little that I can share because a lot of what you're building is proprietary to the institution and it makes them competitive with other institutions. So it's not work you can share. And so you have to find these little pathways to be able to show your worth and your value without necessarily showing your work. And I think for me, it's taken some time to learn how to do that. And when you're, working also by yourself, you don't have that other person to say, hey, that was great what you just did, or you're doing a great job. And yes, you have your clients who can say that, but it's also great to have like I mentioned earlier, some mentors or some people that you can talk to and have contact with to really help push you to talk more about yourself and to market your work even from a 10,000-foot approach, which is really what I've had to do and when marketing my outcomes. And you know, I don't think that it necessarily comes easy for anyone to talk about themselves a lot when you're coming from a higher education environment, because so much of it is about the whole and the team and the institution. And so it's just a different perspective than what I've ever had to do in marketing previously.
Right. You have to say, look at me. Here's what I can do. And in the past, you've been marketing the institution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my name is
Yeah.
never going to be on any work I do. Right. So I may have worked in an institution for 10 years, but you're not going to find any content or any marketing pieces that have my name on it. Now, it doesn't mean that I haven't written thousands of emails, right? Or I haven't produced a ton of content that might be seen in different places, but it's not going to have my name on it. So it's not directly attached to me, right? And so that's also, I think, really difficult.
Well, and even because your clients are in a competitive environment, what you put out for them now, you know, makes getting case studies more challenging.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how do you get a case study when you can't really, you certainly can't disclose confidential information.
Yeah, I feel like in higher education, my best work is often my best kept secret. Many small colleges, they don't want the public to know that they're struggling, right? No one does, whether it's enrollment or budgets or staffing, whatever it might be. And my contracts often limit what I can share. So even if I create an entire communication strategy, dozens of emails, text campaigns, templates, I can't post those online. It's a lot like consultants probably in other industries who can't reveal, client names or project details. You have to market without showing your actual deliverables. And at the beginning, I found that very difficult. My workaround has been to circle back a year or two later to see if I can share some pieces online, because maybe after a couple of years, they've moved on, they have a new campaign. In the meantime, though, there's a couple of things that I've started doing. One is talking about results from like a 10,000-foot approach. I think I mentioned this earlier. So for example, one institution I worked with, we did a complete customer journey. So from when they enter as a prospect all the way through when they're an enrolled student, sometimes even earlier when they're freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and they're coming in. And we implemented this over the course of about 12 to 18 months. And that institution saw enrollment go up at literally every stage of their student journey after we implemented. So the case study that I then told was, without revealing the proprietary work that I did for them, it's just a story without showing every detail. So I start with what their challenges were, the solutions and the services that they utilized me for, and then the ultimate outcome, which was the increased enrollment at every stage. They had increased applications, increased deposits, increased enrollments. And so that's the story that I now have to tell rather than actually showing my deliverables.
Got it. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You also have another challenge that, and you touched on it a moment ago. Higher ed institutions don't advertise their enrollment struggles.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you find prospects who need help but aren't raising their hand publicly? You can't find them on LinkedIn. They're not going to go on LinkedIn and say, I'm struggling here.
Right. They're not going to, right? Yeah, you're not going to be finding higher education clients on a job board saying that they've had a poor enrollment year, right? That's not going to happen. So I found that where you do find them is through conversations. So as I mentioned before, since 2019, I've really run entirely on referrals. At first, it was very organic. Finish a project, maybe get a recommendation. But then when I went full time, I had to be significantly more intentional. I wanted this to start becoming a repeatable process. And So the people I found that I hire me tend to be in three groups. One are new users to CRMs. So there's a pretty prominent CRM in the higher education world called Technolution Slate. And it's a CRM most colleges use to manage communication with prospective students. So if they are implementing that CRM, they're in those beginning stages, that's when I tend to see some people who are reaching out when they're doing implementation. Number two are schools that just realize that their messaging is not landing or it's inconsistent. And so they want to strengthen it. And so they're wanting me to come in with fresh eyes and maybe update or develop from scratch a brand new communication flow to prospects or any population of their students. And then third are institutions that are flat or down in enrollment. Sometimes they're missing talking to entire audiences. I've found that a lot of colleges are not talking to parents of prospective students or school counselors. And they're like, this is a missing piece to our puzzle that we think can make a difference. So those are typically the people that I find. Like you said, the challenge though is if a school's enrollment numbers are struggling, they're not going to be like going on LinkedIn and saying, hey, my numbers are struggling. And so you have to know the right people even to know that that need exists. So I've made referrals part of my process now. It's not just a thing I do on the side or happen to ask for or a happy accident. At the end of every contract, I send a wrap-up survey asking for feedback and then at least one introduction to someone they think might benefit from my work. That way referrals aren't luck, right? They're more of a system. And like I said, when you've done good work, people are glad to connect you, I think, with other people. And so that's the way that I found to use kind of a referral system through higher education rather than, I could go to a national database and find a college whose enrollment is down, but I don't think there's going to be many vice presidents or presidents of enrollment that are going to be very happy to receive a cold call saying, hey, I saw your enrollment was down last year. Do you need help? Right. That happens in other industries, but it just can't happen. And it doesn't happen in higher education. And so those are some of the things I've kind of found that work better for me.
I love that. Building in referrals to the contract so they know right up front. I love that idea. You also talked about you have them complete a survey. You also, from our previous conversation, you asked them to provide a testimonial, and that's
Oh,
built
yes.
into the contract.
That is as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So I have an entire section in my contract about marketing. It is again, challenge that I had early on. I did not have this section in there. And then later I realized, oh, I can't put their logo on my website. I can't talk about a case study because I didn't get their permission. And so I built it into the contract that I ask for them. They must complete the survey at the end of the contract. They allow me to use their logo in any marketing or communications website, digital, any type of strategy that I want to use it in as a former client. And that I might interview them for a case study, something a little bit larger. And then also that they have to provide me their numbers. So because I do work so much with enrollment, I want to know, did what I do have any impact in the long run? And so now I've built that into the contract to where a year later, I'm usually working on an entire year because an admission cycle is a full year. I can come back and say, okay, we're going to, as part of the contract, I'd love for you to provide me some general numbers. I don't need to be breaking FERPA rules. I just want some general data that will then help me talk about the impact that I had for you in your institution. And so those are things that I've continually built. I've continually kind of broadened that scope of marketing in my contract to do that.
It's a great idea. They know right up front.
Mm-hmm.
You work with other companies, other consultants on large RFPs. How do you start building those partnerships and vetting your potential collaborators?
Yes, collaboration in consulting I found is not competition. It is really capacity. And when I went full time, I really needed to be strategic with my time. And also consulting can be very isolating. I was very lucky that in the past year, I joined a organization for higher education consultants and coaches called AHEC. And I just found a network of people there who do what I do in some capacity. Now we are all higher education consultants and coaches, but we all have our specialties. And so instead of passing on large proposals that I was seeing by institutions, big project bids, that's larger than what my capacity is. I thought, well, what if I start reaching out to other consultants who are experts in their specific area, joining up with them, and then putting some proposals out there to see what happens. Because I guarantee you, number one, 2 consultants or 3 consultants together is going to be more affordable on a proposal than an agency with a lot of overhead. So I thought there's a pretty decent opportunity here as far as being affordable enough to be selected for an RFP, but then also I have the ability to choose my teammates, right? And I think that's one of the best parts about it, is being able to collaborate with people when you are a solopreneur and you're working remotely in your office, or in a bedroom every day, and have no interaction with human beings. It's also a really great opportunity to have those brainstorming sessions with someone besides ChatGPT for me. And so the first time I tried it, I partnered with a researcher, and she has a PhD. She's fantastic in analysis and research and data analysis. And so she actually reached out to me and she said, hey, I found a potential project that we could do. Do you want to go in with me on this project? And it required an entire research component and then a marketing communications component. And so we kind of split it up. We put in the proposal. We were selected for the proposal. And we work
Nice.
across, yeah, thank you. And we work across time zones, which is actually turned into an advantage because there's always progress happening. And so even though we may not be able to talk at this, we're not both on the same time zone, it's actually beneficial to us in some way, because something might be happening when I am, getting my kid ready in the morning, and then later in the evening, I might be able to do something else when they're really busy at dinner time. And so we have the ability then to not only have specialties that are really important, but then we're also able to have a lot of flexibility in our management. And it just lets us tackle bigger projects, share the risk, offer clients a handpicked team for less than a big agency. And, the truth is, I think this model can work in any field. You're just bringing the best people together, custom building a team, and then you're delivering more value without inflating the price. And I'm not building a team to scale business. I'm building a team to scale impact. And so I think that for me, this has been one of the greatest outlets that I never considered in the early stages of being a consultant. Was now joining up. And so my hope is I continue to do this in the future, because it's been such a great experience.
And it's because you joined this association or this group that you're able to find people.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's the best part about it is that there's people that show up in there all the time that I don't know. The month of July this year was like an introduction month for me to meet so many new people that I had never met before. And we would set up just little 30-minute meetings to talk about what we each did, what our specialties were. For some of us, there's the work that you love to do, and there's the work you can do, but isn't your favorite thing to do. And so it's nice to find people who love that piece that maybe is not, your favorite. So you're kind of filling the gaps of one another. And like I said, it's a lot of capacity building in your business too, because now I can take on a bigger project without it taking up the next several months and me not being able to take on another client. So if it wasn't really for the association, I don't think that I would have really considered this as an option as a consultant. Also just because I didn't know anyone. And now I feel like I have so many people that I know in so many different areas that I can go to, and also refer. I think referrals also in organizations and stuff that you join is also very important. Get to know people if you are part of professional organizations. I know that just since March when I joined, I've referred people to 3 or 4 other people in our association, and they've gotten work out of it. And I know that they're going to reciprocate that whenever they can. So it also just really branches out from the referral standpoint as well.
I have a tactical question. That's a lot of people to keep in mind. So how do you kind of, so you've had half an hour conversations with people, you both have an idea of each other's capabilities. How do you, what kind of system do you have for being able to go back and say, okay, I met so and so and I really need this kind of function? How do you keep track of all of that?
Yeah, I have a CRM myself. So I have one right now called Zoho. It provides a really great option for a small business, small consultancy. It allows you just to, it connects with your email. So I'm a Google user, so it connects with that. And when I put a new connection in, it'll automatically bring in all the emails we've ever had with one another. So I can see that. I can make notes on their timeline about conversations we've had. I can put too there, like when I've made referrals to them, so I can see too who I've connected them with in the past. And I think that that's been great for me. I started off with an Excel sheet. So honestly, that's a great place to start if you have nothing. But then as you grow and you start having more connections, I do think that having a small CRM like that is really worthwhile. I use it. I have clients that use it, and then I've started using it myself.
What other tools or systems have been game changers for your business?
I'd say the biggest game changer, hands down, is Asana. I use Asana as a project management system. I used it in higher ed along with several other software, but I'll be honest. I think for me, I've tried probably 3 or 4 project management systems. I find Asana the easiest to use, and the most flexible for me. Additionally, I just love that when I complete a task, I have a little unicorn that shoots across my screen. I think that just makes for a great little blip of my day. Um, so I think that that has been the biggest for me. I always say I'm kind of like a left brain creative person. I have a hard time sometimes staying on one task for a long period of time. So I know that my limit sometimes is an hour working on something, and then I can switch to something else. So Asana kind of keeps me managing my time a little bit better, and also just being able to see where my project is, where my deliverables at, what's the next stage of what I need to do. And I also use it for things like my own marketing. That's where I manage blog posts and things that I need to do for my own content marketing, LinkedIn posts. I create everything there. So I really make it a ground for anything that has to do with my business, anything that needs created, and for any client. What also is great is that some clients work with, especially in education, a lot of them have their own project software that they want to use, which is great. But if they don't, then I have the ability to add them for a short time to my Asana. And then we have our own little hub there to make sure and that we're kind of moving the project along as we all expect. And that kind of keeps all of us on track. And yeah, I don't think I could go without it.
Okay, so Zoho and Asana
Mhm.
are the two must-haves. Switching gears to looking forward, where do you see your consulting practice in 5 years?
That is a great question. I think that I will still be full-time in my consulting. I say that because I didn't ever see myself going full-time to begin with. So me being here right now, being a full-time consultant, was not on my 5-year plan 5 years ago. Um, I really thought that I was going to be working at an institution for a long period of time, with my boots on the ground. And I think the pandemic changed that for me and probably changed that for a lot of people. I started working remotely in 2016, and I realized how much I appreciated it, the flexibility. And so my hope is that I'm still doing this full time, that I have a network of great part-time contractors and consultants that I'm working with on a more regular basis. I hope that I'm have a long list of small colleges and universities or small regionals that I can say that I made an impact on. I think that's really important to me. Nowhere in the 5-year plan do I really think much about, money or growth. It's more about the impression that I've been able to make. I think higher education can be really volatile, especially right now. And we're seeing a lot of small colleges close their doors. And if there's anything I can do to help keep somebody open or to get them on the right track to growing their enrollment or making positive impressions through their marketing, then that's what I'm hoping I'm going to have in 5 years, is a long list of clients that have had a lot of success.
I love it. I love it. That's great. So as we wrap up, one last question. What is one marketing strategy every consultant should implement?
Okay, I'm going to dig back into several long time ago. When I first entered higher education, I came in as a digital recruitment marketer. So primarily social media marketing was what I did. Over the years, what I have learned is I would rather do few things very well than many things poorly. So my recommendation is always going to be focus on the things you can do well when promoting yourself. For me, it's just one channel. It's LinkedIn. It's the only place that I focus on. I don't, I've considered adding Instagram and all those other things. I don't think I can do them well, so I'm not going to. LinkedIn is where a majority of the professionals lie for education. It's going to be the place that most professionals lie for other fields and industries as well. So I focus on content marketing through LinkedIn. I think that is where I share how I think, not just what I do. And when you can't market your work as often like I can, then you can market the way you think. And so I write about challenges and opportunities in higher ed that others can relate to in their own fields. And I feel that connection can make a really big impression on other people. So I would say, if you're going to focus on something, focus on content marketing, inbound. That helps you a lot with creating those referrals and creating connections. And then be narrow in what you feel like you can do well. Don't feel like you have to do everything, because I would rather do one thing well than too many things poorly.
Great advice. And with that, that's a great place to wrap up. And for that, so it's a wrap on today's episode of Thriving Through. Thank you, Laura, for being my guest today.
Thank you so much, AJ.
What I hope you take away from this conversation with Laura is a sustainable consulting success doesn't have to come from keeping clients dependent on you. In fact, Laura's proven that the opposite approach, genuinely empowering your clients to succeed independently, can actually build a stronger, more referral-driven practice. Her build them up and step out philosophy might seem counterintuitive, but it's created lasting relationships and repeat business because her clients trust her motives. Here's one action you can take right now. Look at your current client contracts or projects agreements. Are you building in the accountability measures Laura mentions? Next time you start a project, include language about a wrap-up survey, permission to use their logo, and a request for at least one referral introduction. Don't leave these things to chance. Make them part of your process from day one. This simple shift can turn what most consultants hope will happen into what actually happens. Thank you for listening to Thriving Through. If this episode helped you think differently about your consulting practice, I'd love for you to share it with another consultant who could benefit. Until next time, keep thriving through.